The following program is made possible by the friends and partners of Creation Today. Welcome to the Creation Today show, where we bring together interviews with experts and solid Bible teaching. Your co-hosts, Eric Hovind and Paul Taylor, affirm the ultimate authority of God's Word, the truth of creation, and why it matters to you.
We do love dinosaurs. I don't think I could eat a whole one, but I do like them an awful lot.
Actually, people don't tend to find whole dinosaurs. I think they're beautiful, actually. I think they're absolutely lovely.
Welcome to the Creation Today show. Whether you're joining us from one of our many websites or from the podcast or from one of the stations around the world that carries the Creation Today show, thank you for joining us. Today's show, we want to talk about dinosaurs. More importantly, we want to get back to the real facts about dinosaurs and take the dinosaurs back. Don't we, Paul?
We do indeed, yes.
As our props fall here. This right here is actually a real, genuine replica of one of the plates off the back of a stegosaurus. So this proved that it was really hard for him to put his shirt on in the morning. Very difficult, right there. That's what that proves. So Paul, we're going to talk about dinosaurs. Introduce us to the subject today and why this is so important.
Well, I wonder if our viewers had guessed when the film came up that we were going to talk about dinosaurs.
Wonder what we're talking about.
We have a small number of dinosaurs here. And now I have to tell you that these are not necessarily life-size dinosaurs. Not even the one that we have behind us. I don't know whether our cameras can get a shot of the dinosaur that's behind us. He's really good. Do you know what he's called, by the way?
This one I would call, well...
I'll tell you what he's called. He's called Fred. So,
Fred looks awfully like a velociraptor, if you ask me. That's what Fred looks like to me.
Yes.
Nice. This is actually one of the dinosaurs at the Creation store in Pensacola, Florida. So if you ever want to come visit Pensacola, we got ones you can ride on.
That's right.
The rideable dinosaur.
Yeah, you can't ride on a velociraptor because that would be dangerous, but you can ride on, now I've never worked out what type it is. Is it an apatosaurus?
I think we've got an apatosaurus.
An apatosaurus that you can ride on.
Yes, 15-foot long apatosaurus, safe to ride on, saddle and everything. The atheists love it. The atheists absolutely love it when we put saddles on dinosaurs, don't they?
Oh, they think that therefore we're saying that dinosaurs must have been saddled by people so they could ride them. And yet you go to many evolutionary dinosaur parks and they'll do precisely the same thing. At the gift shop they'll have dinosaur scenes to have your photo taken with them, or they'll have saddled dinosaurs for small children to ride on them. But they don't see that as a bit of fun when they want to apply it to creationist circles.
Unbelievable. The truth is, well, we're going to talk about that. Did man and dinosaurs ever live together? Have dinosaurs ever lived contemporaneously? If I put all the syllables in there, with mankind. Are dinosaurs mentioned in the Bible? What are they teaching in the textbooks and in the media about dinosaurs? That's kind of some of the stuff we want to cover.
I think it is. And as we get to that, what it might be useful to do first of all might be to have a look at sort of the modern history of dinosaurs so we can see where the whole business about dinosaurs came from. Because we love dinosaurs, don't we?
We do love dinosaurs. I don't think I could eat a whole one, but I do like them an awful lot.
But, you know, there have been some people who worry about dinosaurs, and maybe we should just touch on this first because, you know, I've done a couple of meetings. I think of one particular meeting that I held in Coventry in England where a lady came up to me afterwards, and it's very interesting she should say this because actually it sounds as if I'm repeating something Ken Ham said. But it did happen to me as well, with almost precisely the same words. Ken has a report of something similar. This lady came up to me and said, you shouldn't be telling people about dinosaurs because dinosaurs never actually existed. They're just imaginary things put there in the rocks by the devil to fool people. Wow.
Well,
It's amazing, isn't it?
What do you say about that? I disagree.
I mean, she went on to say, you know, they're monstrous creatures and God wouldn't create something monstrous. Now, do you think that dinosaurs are monstrous and ugly and devilish-looking creatures?
I guess it depends on which one you're looking at. But no, I think they're actually amazing creatures.
I think they're beautiful, actually. I think they're absolutely lovely. And
now, I gotta be honest, Paul. I was not one of the kids that grew up memorizing all the dinosaur names and knowing all the facts about them. I mean, I'm really glad that we got kids that come to the store and, man, they can tell you every dinosaur's name and, you know, everything that they supposedly know about them. And I never was one of those kids.
Well, I'm afraid I was.
Oh, were you?
And yeah,
the
I was
real
one of
dinosaur
those,
geek.
Yes, and you know what? I had a book, a big colour book about dinosaurs, children's book about dinosaurs from a very young age. And my favourite dinosaur in that whole book, it's an interesting one because it makes a good point. My favourite dinosaur in the whole book was the Brontosaurus.
Oh, that's an amazing creature that never existed.
But basically what they did, I can't remember which way around it is, but wasn't it an Apatosaurus that they accidentally stuck a Brachiosaurus head on or something?
Something like that, yeah. They had the wrong head on the wrong skeleton at the museum, came up with a brand new dinosaur called the Brontosaurus, and there is no such thing as a Brontosaurus. So, hate to, let you down, all those people that learned about the Brontosaurus. There's the Brachiosaur, the Seismosaur, the Cetosaur, the Apatosaur, the
Diplodocus.
Yes, so there's lots of different long-necked dinosaurs, or you could just say like a 5-year-old and say the long necks. Because
they're probably, in many ways, they could well be of the same kind, the same family, some of these long-necked dinosaurs. And, I remember a colleague of mine saying to a class, which family does this dinosaur belong to? One of his students said, don't know, sir, no family in our street has one. And,
which family does this belong to?
But dinosaurs started making news headlines back in the 19th century.
Okay.
And, it's very interesting to look at the history of that because we often talk about that history of dinosaurs. And one person was called the Reverend William Buckland. Now, you can see a picture of him, Reverend William Buckland. One of the interesting things about about Reverend William Buckland is he seemed to have no arms and only half a body. But apart from that, he was at Oxford University, and despite those particular problems, he was able to discover lots of fossils. He was the first one, in fact, to discover a fossil Megalosaurus. And he gave it that name.
Did he dig it up? Was he one of those guys, a paleontologist type guy that would go out and dig these things up?
That's right. He was one of these people. Basically, most of them are amateurs, and he dug the Megalosaurus up. And you can see on the screen a picture of a skeleton of a Megalosaurus, but it's only a drawing. And why is it only a drawing? It's only a drawing because we don't actually know what it looked like because nobody has ever found a whole one.
So we've never seen the whole thing, so draw it like this, and it's kind of guesswork, and they think they're kind of close.
It is. And that's interesting because, we shouldn't have a go at those people who named the Brontosaurus and thought they had a new dinosaur, because actually people don't tend to find whole dinosaurs. Just shortly before I came to live in the United States, I remember there being a news item in Britain about a dinosaur that they discovered in what's known as the Jurassic Coast on the south coast of England, Dorset coast, near Lyme Regis. And they said that this was the most complete dinosaur they had ever found in England. 90%. 90%. The most complete dinosaur ever found in 250 years, nearly 300 years in England. 10% missing.
Wow. So the bottom line is we don't find all the bones together. Let's go real quick through the history of dinosaurs. I know we're going to take a break here in just a minute, but just give me a quick, let's see, we know that this, what's the guy that started discovering them and started digging them up?
Well, we've talked about William Buckland. We're going to start talking about Mary Ann Mantle after the break. We'll talk about Gideon Mantle, we'll talk about Richard Owen, and we'll talk about Mr. Fox as well.
Okay, well, the word dinosaur is actually a pretty new word. That's kind of what we want to get into.
That's right.
And then show the history of when did they start using that terminology, and what were these creatures called before they were called dinosaurs? So
Absolutely.
We'll talk about that right after this.
To order this book, visit us at creationstore.org.
The book is called Chronicles of Dinosauria, and really it goes down through and documents these key areas of evidence. We know that men and dinosaurs coexisted because of the biblical evidence, the historical evidence, the paleontological evidence, and the artistic evidence. That's the iconography of dragons. And I document what, in my opinion, are the best pieces of evidence at each of those. And then I talk about the cryptozoological evidence and my personal research. And so you got those 5 key areas that are identified in the book, and it's available right now at creationstore.org.
Welcome back. You're watching the Creation Today show with me, Paul Taylor, and with Eric Hovind. And we were talking before the break, Eric, about dinosaurs, early dinosaurs being discovered like Megalosaurus, and how they don't find all the bones.
No, they don't. Typically, they find very few. You just mentioned that 90% was the most complete skeleton that they've ever discovered.
And that's very difficult for evolutionists to be able to explain, because we have a good explanation for that, because these animals died in pain, being smashed to death in a worldwide flood.
That would make sense.
But we find bones around the place, and that just reminds me, I just need to ask the producer something. Jeff, I chose this one. Is that okay?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I had a bone to pick with him.
Yeah.
But
well, I'm glad you guys got that picked out.
Yeah. The second dinosaur to be discovered was Iguanodon. Now, Iguanodon's a very, very interesting dinosaur because they made lots of mistakes about this, but it was discovered by a lady, Mary Ann Mantle. Now, I have searched the interweb all over the place, and I cannot find pictures of her that are very...
Yeah, I don't think they let people take pictures of girls back then.
Not really, not many.
Yeah.
And really, the credit seemed to go to her husband, Gideon Mantle. But,
as it should.
But that was 1822.
So they discovered the first dinosaur bones, really, or what's it called, Iguanodon, back in 1822.
Yes, Megalosaurus discovered before that, but reported in 1824.
Okay.
Now, we know the significance of those dates, but maybe our viewers don't. The significance was that 1841 was what? That was
when Richard Owens actually coined the term dinosaur.
Yes.
So here they've discovered these animals, and the word dinosaur hasn't even been made up yet, which is interesting, and you got some interesting facts about that as well.
Well, it's good to talk about Richard Owen himself, and let's see a picture of Richard Owen. This is what Richard Owen looks like, a very interesting man. He invented the word dinosaur. He also did a lot of classification of dinosaur fossils, and he developed the Natural History Museum in London. Now, if you haven't had the good fortune to go to the Natural History Museum in London, I've been there many times, but actually that museum really changed the way that museums were supposed to be, and has had an influence, in fact, on all dinosaur museums since then. So you look at, the one in the fictional Night at the Museum film, for example. It's the same sort of thing. This huge cathedral-like structure. One of the interesting things is that on the stonework over the door of the Natural History Museum, you can see inscribed, "Built to the glory of God."
That's fascinating. Right there in front of the museum.
Yeah. But inside that, what does that remind you of, when you see the inside of the museum?
It reminds you of when I look at this, I think of a cathedral or a church. I mean, it's literally... that's what it looks like.
And right at the back of that sort of cathedral area is a statue of Richard Owen looking beneficently over that chamber.
Richard Owen was literally a creationist. He was somebody who loved God and wanted to display these things for the glory of God.
That's right. That was his intention. He's there looking over the entrance. The thing is, you probably realize that photo is not terribly clear because it's an old photo. It's actually from 1975. Managed to find a photo from there and scanned it, so it's not a particularly clear photo. The thing is, there's a closer-up view that I managed to find on the internet. Richard Owen's statue at the head of the staircase, but he's not there anymore. When I went to visit in 2009, they had moved him. They had moved him, and they had replaced him with that man.
Charles Darwin. Wow. So they've taken Richard Owen out, who built this entire thing for the glory of God, and they've replaced it with Charles Darwin, who is saying, hey, evolution is what got us here, and all this is evidence of evolution.
That's right.
It reminds me when we went to the Natural History Museum here in America, in Washington, a couple months ago. And all these places you go these days are actually designed to indoctrinate kids with evolution, with the lie, rather than teach them the truth about how these animals were created to glorify God. When I think of scripture verses, I think of how many times did God say He made every living creature, and He made them to glorify Himself. And yet today they're not doing that.
But, from Richard Owen's time onwards, people have been very interested in dinosaurs and seeing them. One of Richard Owen's contemporaries was a man called Benjamin Waterhouse Hawkins. And what he's particularly famous for is he built a dinosaur park. He thought people would like to see these dinosaurs, and he built a dinosaur park at Crystal Palace in London. And here's a picture of the Crystal Palace Dinosaur Park. The dinosaurs might look a little odd. For example, here's the Megalosaurus, first of all. And the first thing you might notice is it doesn't actually look like the Megalosaurus we saw a little while ago.
No, it's definitely a lot different.
And we did say, didn't we, that they haven't found a complete skeleton. So, I mean, how on earth do they put dinosaurs together if they don't find the complete thing?
It's guesswork. It really is. They are literally trying to put together a jigsaw puzzle and figure this out. So there's a whole lot of guesswork when it comes into
it is a jigsaw puzzle, but there's no picture on the box.
Yeah, that's true.
And even worse, there's no picture on the pieces. And several of the pieces are missing.
That's
at
tough
least
to put that
10%
kind
of them.
of,
So
tough to put that jigsaw puzzle together.
Absolutely amazing. But it's just fascinating. For example, you've got the iguanodon at Crystal Palace, and it was named that way because it's supposed to look like the iguana lizard. It's got the spike on its nose, but they now know, of course, that it didn't have a spike on its nose. The
that
spike
was actually
on
from his hand.
Yeah. So it's all to do with how they put the things together, and the fact that you do not find the complete dinosaurs. They're all smashed to pieces.
Okay, so here they've built Dinosaur Palace. Here they've built these areas where they're talking about dinosaurs. When did the term dinosaurs really start getting used then?
Well, it's interesting. It was invented in 1841, and it was used as a scientific term then. But, you know, that fits in with other time scales. We know, for example, that Darwin was on the Beagle from 1831 to 36.
Right.
Darwin met Richard Owen in 1837, so that's still 4 years before the invention of the word dinosaur. And the year before the invention of the word dinosaur, there was a very important scientific paper called The Book of the Great Sea Dragons, published by Thomas Hawkins. And that's all about plesiosaurs and things like that. So
really? So this is 18 what that he wrote this?
1840.
So in 1840, there's a book written about the Great Sea Dragons.
That's right. But that you would expect that, of course, I suppose, because that's the year before the invention of the term dinosaur.
But still, the fact that they're writing about supposed dragons back in 1840, when scientists today say, hey, they died millions of years ago.
Yes.
Don't we see a conflict here?
We do see a great conflict. And of course, over the next years, Darwin's theory of evolution was beginning to be released. People were talking about it. In 1858, Darwin presented his paper to the Linnaean Society. 1859, he published The Origin of Species. But then even after that, 6 years after that, 1856, we've got an interesting journal entry in the diary of Emily Tennyson. Emily Tennyson was the wife of Alfred Lord Tennyson. The two of them were visiting a friend of theirs called Fox. He was called Reverend
Fox.
William Fox. He lived in the Isle of Wight. He tended to dig up fossils. And also another guest at the dinner party was Richard Owen. Our friend Richard Owen, who had invented the word dinosaur, wanted it to be used scientifically. And what does she write in her journal? She says that we're talking about the skeleton that they'd found, the fossil they'd found. She described it as a dragon, a great dragon.
So they had dug up a skeleton and they called this thing a dragon.
And that's 1865.
Even after the word dinosaur was invented?
Even after the word dinosaur has been invented. But you know, after the break, we're going to find out a little bit more about William Fox and a little bit more about the use of the word dragon, even in scientific literature.
At 21 years old, I was a self-professed Christian, but I didn't know God. I had been raised in church and in a Christian home and Christian school and enrolled in a Christian college. I was around church and religion literally all my life. So why didn't I know God? Growing up in a Christian home, I got really good at pretending to be a Christian. I didn't really have a desire for righteousness. Instead, the only thing I pursued was trying to make everybody think that I was a good person and give the perception that I had Christ as my Savior. I just wanted to look good among my friends. Paul, this is by far the best book on dinosaurs I've ever read.
No, this one's the best book on dinosaurs that I've ever read.
No, this one covers the flood and dinosaurs. It covers fossil evidence and dinosaurs.
Yeah, but this one has pictures of dragons from around the world and shows that they're actually like dinosaurs. And,
Guys, we're rolling.
Oh.
Hey, welcome back to the Creation Today show. I'm one of your hosts, Eric Hovind, and I'm joined by Paul Taylor, and we are reading books on dinosaurs today. Our friend Dave Wetzel wrote a book called Chronicles of Dinosauria, which is a fabulous book that covers dinosaurs with man and dinosaurs all through history, which is kind of what we're talking about. The word dinosaur is a brand new word.
It is, but what's interesting is that scientific writing was still using the word dragon even after the word dinosaur had been invented. We talked about Fox, William Fox, discovering a dinosaur in the Isle of Wight, but there's some interesting stuff even on the BBC's website about William Fox.
He was a reverend, right?
He was a reverend, but eventually got basically dismissed by the church because he wasn't concentrating on his parish. He wasn't really interested in his parish. He was interested in his fossils.
More interested in the bones than in...
But he used to correspond with Richard Owen. Now, correspondence, you need to understand letter writing in that time. It wasn't really like, you know, being on an internet forum today. This was how science research went on. They wouldn't be writing a letter saying, hey, the weather's nice here, wish you were here.
Yeah.
It was detailed scientific stuff and getting opinions back. That's how science proceeded. So he wrote a letter, and this is dated, well, it's not got a date on it, but it was postmarked from the Isle of Wight. Now, we'll come to the date of that in a minute, but this is what he says. It says that he was always putting the bones first and the parish next. And he says...
Why he got fired.
He says, I cannot leave this place while I have any money left to live on. I take such deep joy in hunting for old dragons. This is a scientific
He's not talking
letter.
about a live dragon. He's talking about the fossils.
He's talking about the fossils. He's not talking about finding fire-breathing dragons on the Isle of Wight. He's talking about the fossils. But he didn't even move to the Isle of Wight until 1862. And this is probably later. This is probably after he'd left his ministry. But the earliest it could possibly be is 1862. So the earliest it could be is 21 years after the development of the word dinosaur.
So the word dinosaur had already been invented. He's corresponding with Sir Richard Owen, who invented the word, coined the word dinosaur, and yet 21 years later, he's still calling them dragons.
In the scientific literature, the scientific way of writing, he still wants to refer to them as dragons.
So this is once again another opportunity to see that dinosaurs and dragons lived contemporaneously. They lived at the same time. They were basically the same creatures, and these things have always lived with people.
Yes.
Okay, what kind of evidence do we have of that? Because that's what Dave Wetzel goes into. That's what Vance Nelson goes into in his book, Dire Dragons, how dinosaurs and mankind have actually always lived together.
Well, you had the opportunity of interviewing Dave Wetzel about some of his finds, and it's really relevant to this because we've got a video clip of you talking to Dave about an artifact from China, a dragon from China, and you can see the sort of green patina on it. And, well, maybe we should roll the clip.
Yeah, can you guys roll that? Let's check it out.
One of the things that I want to talk about is this Chinese artifact, and this is actually in the book. It's also on the website, genesispark.com. Yeah, it is kind of dirty. This is what we call a patina, and the patina is actually showing that it's authentic. It has a lot of the bronze has been turned to green, and it's got a fair amount of dirt that's in the cleavage there. What we've got is a dragon depiction. Chinese have a lot of dragon depictions, but a couple things make this one particularly fascinating. This one showed up on the Chinese antiquities market down in New York City. I was able to purchase it, but all over the body of this you see these scale representations. You've got the tail, and you've got some barbs actually on the tail, and then you've got the tridactyl foot configuration, the 3 toes there. And then we've got a very interesting head. We've got a rather long, not terribly long, but a rather long neck coming up. And then you can see these striations showing a very realistic depiction of a horn and a little bit of a head frill even up on top. Things like a head frill are not obviously well preserved usually when you deal with skeletons, not like bones. So we don't know this type of thing so much from the fossil record. But we do have a number of dinosaurs that have the 3 toes, the long tail, obviously they would have had a scale, reptilian type of exterior, and the beak. One in particular stands out, the oviraptor. And the oviraptor is a pretty good match for this particular antiquities image here.
Now you've actually had this x-rayed and had some some things done to authenticate this, and you've got the paperwork. By the way, this is available on his website, genesispark.com, which you need to check out.
And what I did is actually sent it up to a friend of mine in Canada, a guy by the name of Vance Nelson, who's a very careful researcher, and he had it x-rayed. And one of the things they were looking for is to see if this was done in a mold, as we would do it in things today. And in fact, it showed that it was put together in different pieces, which helped to authenticate that it's not a replica, it's actual genuine artifact.
Well, that's a fascinating clip there.
He's a very interesting man to talk to. He's been to so many different places. He's one of these guys that he said, look, I don't want to just hear the stories of dinosaurs that have been spotted or things like this. I want to go see it for myself. So he and his wife have taken every vacation that they've done, has been to a place to study more about this. So he's incredibly intelligent and spent a lot of time and energy and effort to go study the truth about dinosaurs.
And in the clip, it mentioned his website, genesispark.com.
Yes.
But I think what he didn't mention was the title of his book, which we ought to mention, which is Chronicles of Dinosauria. And really, we need to recommend that.
Highly recommend that, because he's done such a good job with this. He spent literally years researching this and putting this stuff together so that for, a couple bucks you can get it and get all of his research. It's amazing. And
he mentioned, of course, in the clip his fellow researcher, Vance Nelson in Canada. Correct. And Vance Nelson was the compiler of the other book that we were looking at when we came back from the break.
Amazing resources if you really want to get some foundational facts on dinosaurs. These would be two great books to start with.
It's just incredible, actually, that such researchers can produce two fact-filled books, very little overlap between them, because there's such a lot to say on the subject.
And there is a lot. As a matter of fact, we're going to have to continue this next week and talk a little bit more about dinosaurs. But I just want to kind of conclude here, Paul, with this whole idea that, look, we see evidence of dragons and dinosaurs being used interchangeably, the terms being used interchangeably throughout history. The guy who invented the word dinosaur used the word dragon. There is plenty of evidence to show that dinosaurs and dragons are basically the same creatures, and that dragons and dinosaurs and people have lived together.
Absolutely. And of course, we've mentioned a few times, and it's worth mentioning again, that there are several places in the Bible where we think that it's referring to dinosaurs. One of the most famous ones being Job chapter 40, where God is talking to Job and saying, look at the behemoth. And he's doing that because he's giving Job a catalogue of 184 things from creation that should really shut Job's mouth so that he can stand in awe of the Creator. And of course, it does just that. Job says, I repent. And,
yes, I'm sorry, God. Forgive me,
And it's just amazing that Job turns back to God in repentance and faith after that.
So God used the dinosaurs to get Job's attention. Hey, let's take dinosaurs back. In your life, why don't you start teaching somebody the truth about the dinosaurs and use the facts to take them back for the glory of God. We want to thank you guys for joining us this week. Hope to see you again next week.
Do you need the tools to defend your faith? Visit our websites for up-to-date content. Attend one of our live events. And shop online at creationstore.org. We are Creation Today.